Pressure reveals what praise can never uncover. Fire exposes what comfort keeps hidden. Storms awaken what silence allows to sleep. And sometimes before God elevates a woman into her calling, he allows her to pass through a season that feels like breaking, not to destroy her, not to diminish her worth, not to silence her voice, but to awaken the strength, wisdom, authority, and faith already placed inside her spirit. There is a mystery in how God prepares his daughters. A woman often carries destiny in her womb long before she carries it in her hands. She feels purpose before she sees results. She nurtures vision before the world ever notices. And because she is designed to carry life, emotionally, spiritually, relationally, God often works deeply within her inner world first, not superficially, not casually, but intentionally. Breaking is never abandonment. It is alignment. It is the holy rearranging of what cannot travel into the next season. It is the gentle but firm removal of weakness disguised as comfort. It is God shaping a heart that can sustain what he is about to release. Breaking is alignment, not abandonment. This truth reshapes the way pain, loss, delay, and disappointment should be understood in a believer's life, especially in the life of a woman whom God is preparing for purpose. When something breaks, the natural reaction is to assume damage, failure, or rejection. Human thinking connects breaking with destruction, punishment, or being discarded. But in the spiritual realm, breaking often carries a completely different meaning. It is not God stepping away from someone's life. It is God stepping closer, working more deeply, rearranging what cannot remain the same if destiny is to be fulfilled. Alignment means positioning something correctly so that it can function as it was designed. A wheel out of alignment may still move, but it damages itself over time and cannot reach its full potential. In the same way, a life slightly out of alignment with God's will, identity, values, or purpose may appear fine on the surface, but will eventually experience internal strain, emotional exhaustion, confusion, and repeated cycles of frustration. God allows breaking not because he enjoys suffering, but because he loves too much to allow his daughter to live misaligned, limited, or trapped in patterns that will harm her future. Abandonment creates isolation, hopelessness, and loss of direction. Alignment produces clarity, strength, and stability, even if the process feels painful at first. When God breaks a woman, he is not withdrawing his presence. He is refining her sensitivity to his voice, teaching her to depend on him more deeply, and removing attachments that distract her from her true assignment. The pain does not mean God is left. Often, it means he is closer than ever, carefully shaping every detail of the heart. Many women experience seasons where familiar support systems shift, relationships change, doors close unexpectedly, or dreams seem delayed. These moments can feel like rejection or divine silence, yet often they are divine repositioning. God may be protecting her from connections that would limit her growth, from opportunities that would compromise her values, or from environments that would slowly drain her spirit. What feels like loss is sometimes rescue. What feels like delay is sometimes protection. What feels like breaking is often preparation for something greater than what she could currently sustain. Alignment also requires the removal of internal barriers. Fear, insecurity, people-pleasing, unresolved wounds, pride, dependency, and false identity can quietly control decisions without being noticed. These inner patterns cannot survive in the next level of calling God intends to release. So God lovingly exposes them through circumstances that stretch comfort zones, challenge emotional stability, and confront hidden beliefs. The breaking brings awareness. Awareness brings healing. Healing brings freedom. Freedom creates alignment. A woman who has never experienced breaking may carry strength on the outside, but fragility on the inside. She may function well publicly while privately battling insecurity, fear of rejection, or emotional exhaustion. God desires wholeness, not performance. He desires depth, not appearance. Alignment means the inner life matches the outer calling. The heart must be able to carry the weight of influence without collapsing under pressure. Breaking strengthens the internal foundation so that future success does not become future destruction. When alignment happens, priorities shift. What once seemed urgent becomes less important. What once seemed insignificant becomes valuable. A woman begins to see herself differently, value herself correctly, and trust God more confidently. She learns to say no without guilt, to walk away from unhealthy patterns without fear, and to wait without anxiety. Her decisions become guided by peace rather than pressure. Her relationships become healthier because they are rooted in truth rather than neediness. Her faith matures from emotional dependence into spiritual confidence. Alignment also reconnects a woman to her authentic identity. Many women carry labels placed on them by culture, family expectations, past failures, or painful experiences. Breaking dismantles false identities so that God can reveal who she truly is. When those external voices lose power, clarity emerges. She no longer measures herself by comparison or approval, but by divine truth. Her confidence becomes stable because it is rooted in purpose rather than performance. The feeling of abandonment usually arises when the mind interprets silence or struggle as rejection, but God's silence is often instruction in listening. His distance is often an invitation into deeper intimacy. His delays are often strategic positioning. When a woman learns to trust God's character rather than her circumstances, peace begins to replace fear. She realizes that even in confusion, God remains faithful. Even in uncertainty, God remains intentional. Even in discomfort, God remains present. Breaking as alignment teaches patience. It slows impulsive decisions and creates space for wisdom. It trains the heart to wait for divine timing rather than rushing into premature outcomes. What is rushed may succeed temporarily, but collapse long term. What is aligned may take longer, but carries stability, endurance, and lasting fruit. Over time, the fruit of alignment becomes visible. Emotional reactions become calmer. Discernment becomes sharper. Boundaries become healthier. Faith becomes deeper. Peace becomes stronger. Confidence becomes steady rather than fragile. A woman no longer chases what drains her. She attracts what aligns with her purpose. She no longer fears being alone because she understands the value of wholeness. She no longer clings to what God has already removed. Breaking never means God has rejected his daughter. It means he is repositioning her for longevity, fruitfulness, and impact. The pain is not wasted. The tears are not ignored. The struggle is not meaningless. Every adjustment carries intentional love. Every removal carries divine wisdom. Every uncomfortable shift carries future stability. When a woman embraces breaking as alignment rather than abandonment, her perspective transforms. She stops fighting the process and begins trusting the outcome. She no longer defines herself by what she lost, but by what she is becoming. She learns to rest in God's hands, even when the shaping feels uncomfortable. And in time, she discovers that the season that once felt like everything was falling apart was actually the season when everything finally began to fall into place. Inner healing comes before outer promotion. This principle reveals the way God builds lasting strength, integrity, and purpose in a woman's life. Human nature often focuses on visibility, recognition, achievement, and outward success. People desire open doors, elevation, influence, answered prayers, and visible progress. But God looks deeper than surface results. He examines the heart, the mind, the motives, the emotional stability, the hidden wounds, and the private thoughts that shape decisions when no one is watching. God understands that outward promotion without inward healing eventually leads to collapse, confusion, pride, exhaustion, or broken relationships. So before he enlarges a woman's platform, he strengthens her inner world. Inner healing means adder, essing what has been buried, ignored, normalized, or silently endured. Many women carry emotional scars from rejection, abandonment, betrayal, comparison, childhood wounds, unmet expectations, or repeated disappointments. These experiences quietly shape reactions, choices, boundaries, and self-worth. A woman may appear confident externally while internally struggling with fear of failure, fear of abandonment, people-pleasing, perfectionism, or insecurity. Without healing, promotion amplifies pressure rather than purpose. Influence magnifies what already exists inside. If unresolved pain remains, success can expose weakness rather than strength. God desires wholeness, not just usefulness. He is not interested in using someone while their heart remains fractured. He is committed to restoring identity before releasing authority. When healing takes place, a woman no longer seeks validation from applause, relationships, or achievements. She knows who she is. She understands her value. She carries peace regardless of circumstances. Her confidence flows from truth rather than approval. Her obedience flows from trust rather than fear. Her leadership flows from wisdom rather than insecurity. Healing also protects a woman from repeating unhealthy cycles. Unhealed wounds often attract familiar pain disguised as comfort. A woman may unconsciously choose relationships, environments, or opportunities that mirror past trauma because it feels recognizable, even when it is unhealthy. Healing. G breaks those cycles. It renews the mind, sharpens discernment, and strengthens boundaries. When God heals the inner life, decisions become clearer, reactions become healthier, and relationships become more stable. Promotion without healing may elevate a person into greater confusion, but healing before promotion creates sustainability. Inner healing teaches emotional maturity. Instead of reacting impulsively, a healed woman responds wisely. Instead of internalizing every criticism, she filters feedback through truth. Instead of carrying resentment, she learns forgiveness and release. Instead of suppressing pain, she allows God to transform it into wisdom and compassion. Emotional maturity allows her to handle responsibility, pressure, leadership, and influence without losing peace or identity. Healing also aligns a woman's motives. Without healing, ambition can be driven by comparison, insecurity, revenge, or the need to prove worth. With healing, ambition becomes aligned with purpose, service, and obedience. The desire to succeed shifts from self-glory to God-glory. The pursuit of opportunity becomes guided by peace rather than pressure. A healed heart does not chase attention. It carries quiet confidence and stability. God understands that leadership and influence expose character. Pressure reveals what comfort hides. Authority magnifies what already exists within. If pride, fear, bitterness, or insecurity remain unhealed, they will surface under responsibility. That's why God often delays visible promotion while accelerating invisible transformation. The hidden work of healing is more valuable than the public celebration of success. The private victory over fear is more powerful than public applause. Inner healing also strengthens a woman's relationship with God. When wounds are surrendered, intimacy deepens. Prayer becomes honest rather than performative. Trust becomes natural rather than forced. Faith grows from experience rather than theory. A healed heart can receive God's love without suspicion, guilt, or fear. She no longer doubts whether she deserves blessing. She believes what God says about her. This spiritual stability becomes the anchor that holds her steady when promotion eventually arrives. Healing does not mean the absence of memories. It means the absence of control those memories once had. The past no longer dictates reactions, self-worth, or expectations. The pain no longer defines identity. The disappointment no longer shapes decisions. Instead, wisdom replaces fear, peace replaces anxiety, and confidence replaces insecurity. A healed woman carries authority not because she dominates others, but because she governs herself well. Promotion without healing often produces burnout. A woman may achieve success but lose joy, peace, health, or relationships. She may become exhausted from trying to maintain an image rather than living authentically. Healing restores balance. It teaches rest, boundaries, and self-care without guilt. It allows a woman to serve from overflow rather than depletion. When inner life is healthy, outward fruit becomes sustainable. God's timing reflects wisdom, not denial. When promotion seems delayed, it is often because healing is still unfolding. God values longevity over speed. He values depth over visibility. He values stability over popularity. He understands that a healed heart can steward blessing wisely, while an unhealed heart may misuse, abuse, or lose what is given. As healing progresses, confidence becomes quiet yet unshakable. A woman stops competing, comparing, and proving. She becomes secure in her assignment. She celebrates others without jealousy. She trusts God's timing without anxiety. She releases control without fear. She walks in clarity rather than confusion. Her presence brings peace rather than tension. Her leadership brings safety rather than pressure. When God finally promotes a healed woman, she carries maturity, humility, discernment, patience, and compassion. She does not collapse under pressure. She does not become intoxicated by applause. She does not compromise her values for opportunity. She remains anchored in truth. Her influence blesses others rather than damaging them. Her success becomes a testimony of grace rather than ego. Inner healing before outer promotion is an act of divine love. God protects his daughters from success that would harm their souls. He prepares them to carry influence without losing identity. He strengthens them to walk in authority without losing humility. He heals them so that their future remains stable, fruitful, and filled with peace. And when promotion finally arrives, it no longer defines her. It simply reflects the wholeness already established within her. Breaking builds discernment and boundaries. This principle is one of the most essential lessons in a woman's spiritual journey because it explains why difficult seasons, painful experiences, and challenging relationships often precede clarity, wisdom, and stability in life. Discernment is the ability to see beyond the surface, to understand the spiritual and emotional truths that govern decisions, relationships, and opportunities. Boundaries are the protective measures that maintain peace, honor, and integrity in every area of life. Without both, influence, success, and blessings can be easily mismanaged or even lost. God allows breaking not to harm a woman, but to awaken these qualities within her so that she can navigate life with wisdom, strength, and purpose. Discernment often arises from experience. When a woman faces betrayal, disappointment, or manipulation, she begins to recognize patterns that she may have ignored before. She learns that not everyone who smiles with her intentions is truly aligned with her best interests. She begins to see that words can be deceptive and actions reveal true character. Breaking provides situations that expose hidden motives, test integrity, and illuminate areas where judgment needs refinement. Without breaking, discernment often remains theoretical, practiced only in thought rather than embedded in lived experience. Life storms teach what books cannot. They reveal what prayer alone may not uncover without context. They educate the heart, not just the mind. Boundaries emerge alongside discernment. A woman who has been broken learns that not all connections deserve access to her time, emotions, or resources. She recognizes the difference between influence and control, support and dependency, obligation and responsibility. Breaking shows the consequences of overextending herself emotionally, spiritually, or physically. It reveals where she has tolerated disrespect, ignored red flags, or given beyond what is healthy. Boundaries are not walls of isolation. They are gates of protection, wisdom, and self-respect. They preserve her peace, maintain her integrity, and ensure that her energy is directed toward what aligns with her calling. Breaking also teaches the critical lesson of prioritization. A woman learns that not every battle is hers to fight, not every opinion requires a response, and not every invitation warrants acceptance. Discernment helps her identify which situations are worth investment and which are better left untouched. Boundaries give her the courage to say no without guilt, to step away from toxicity without fear, and to reserve her best for relationships, opportunities, and environments that honor her values and vision. Breaking is the classroom in which these lessons are often learned, not comfortably, but profoundly and permanently. Moreover, breaking refines emotional intelligence. A woman who has been hurt, misunderstood, or taken for granted develops the ability to read people, understand motivations, and anticipate outcomes more clearly. She notices subtle cues, hears what is unsaid, and evaluates intentions rather than appearances. This emotional acuity is vital for leadership, influence, and personal growth. Without discernment, good intentions can be misread, wisdom can be misapplied, and energy can be wasted on what cannot produce fruit. Breaking ensures that a woman's sensitivity becomes strength rather than vulnerability. Breaking also strengthens resilience. When boundaries are tested, people disappoint, and circumstances shift unexpectedly. A woman who has been broken learns to stand firm without collapsing under pressure. Discernment guides her decisions, and boundaries safeguard her stability. She learns to confront conflict without being consumed by it, to walk away when necessary without regret, and to protect her peace while remaining compassionate. This combination of insight and protection is essential for sustaining long-term success, emotional health, and spiritual integrity. Breaking shapes decision-making. A woman learns to evaluate situations carefully, weigh consequences, and respond thoughtfully rather than impulsively. She discovers the difference between short-term gain and long-term alignment, between emotional reaction and wise response, between superficial loyalty and genuine commitment. Discernment ensures that her choices are grounded in truth, guided by wisdom, and aligned with God's purpose for her life. Boundaries ensure that these choices are implemented consistently, protecting her from compromise, distraction, and unnecessary pain. Breaking also teaches humility and dependence on God. A woman who has been tested and refined learns that discernment is not just a natural gift, but a spiritual skill that comes from listening to God, seeking his wisdom, and trusting his guidance. Boundaries, likewise, are reinforced not by pride or isolation, but by reliance on God's direction. She learns to recognize when a situation requires her involvement and when it requires faith, patience, or prayer. Discernment and boundaries are therefore spiritual disciplines as much as practical skills cultivated in seasons of challenge and refinement. Ultimately, breaking equips a woman for influence and leadership. She becomes a person whose counsel carries weight because it is informed by experience. She becomes a woman whose decisions reflect integrity because they are tested by trial. She becomes a leader whose presence commands respect not through authority alone, but through wisdom, clarity, and a demonstrated understanding of human nature. Her discernment prevents manipulation. Her boundaries prevent exploitation. Together, they allow her to operate from a place of power, peace, and purpose rather than reaction, fear, or insecurity. A woman who has been broken first does not shy away from challenges. She meets them with insight. She does not give indiscriminately. She gives wisely. She does not trust superficially. She trusts with understanding. Breaking does not weaken her. It strengthens her internal compass, sharpens her perception, and solidifies her personal and spiritual limits. She becomes capable of navigating life with grace under pressure, clarity in confusion, and strength in vulnerability. Discernment and boundaries born from breaking are protective yet empowering. They are not restrictions but liberations. They ensure that a woman's gifts, energy, and influence are directed where they matter most. They prevent unnecessary heartbreak, wasted effort, and compromise. They cultivate wisdom that cannot be purchased, patience that cannot be forced, and peace that cannot be stolen. Through breaking, a woman learns not only how to survive, but how to thrive, and her life becomes a testimony to the divine craftsmanship that turns trials into teaching, pain into perception, and challenges into clarity. Identity is revealed when everything else is stripped away. This truth is at the heart of why God allows breaking in the life of a woman. Identity is often tied to external factors, relationships, achievements, status, approval, or recognition. From a young age, a woman may be conditioned to define herself by what others say about her, by the roles she fills, or by the accomplishments she achieves. She may believe that her worth is dependent on being needed, admired, or successful in ways that the world values. But God's design operates differently. He desires that her sense of self is rooted in who he created her to be, not in what the world applauds or circumstances allow. When everything else is stripped away, the layers of expectation, obligation, and validation are removed, leaving space for true identity to emerge. Stripping away does not happen lightly. It often begins with loss of a relationship, a position, recognition, opportunity, or comfort. Sometimes it comes through failure, rejection, or betrayal. At first, these experiences feel devastating. They challenge everything that has been built on external validation. A woman may ask, who am I without this? What am I without their approval? Pain is often the catalyst that drives self-examination, forcing her to confront the reality that identity cannot survive dependent on what is fleeting. The stripping away is not punishment, but revelation. It exposes what is temporary so that the permanent can take root. In these moments, God teaches that identity is internal, not external. A woman learns that her value is not conditional on performance or recognition. It is not dependent on someone loving her, validating her, or affirming her worth. Identity is anchored in the unchanging truth of who God created her to be. Her significance flows from the fact that she was designed intentionally, uniquely, and with purpose. Even when everything external is gone, this truth remains. It cannot be taken, diminished, or destroyed. Understanding this transforms a woman's perspective. She is no longer defined by circumstances, but by divine design. Stripping away also highlights the contrast between temporary and eternal. Things that were once sources of pride or comfort, titles, possessions, relationships, achievements can be removed, yet God remains. The loss of these things does not diminish value, but clarifies it. When a woman's identity is tested in the absence of external markers, her reliance shifts from what she can control to the God who controls all. The stripping away forces a confrontation with the question, who am I when no one is watching? Who am I when nothing is going as planned? In that confrontation, a deeper, purer self emerges, grounded in spiritual truth rather than human opinion. This process also refines self-understanding. A woman begins to distinguish between the identity she was told to assume and the identity God intended for her. Cultural, familial, and societal expectations often impose roles that conflict with purpose. Breaking removes the influence of others' agendas, forcing her to examine her authentic desires, gifts, and calling. She learns to recognize what aligns with her soul and what compromises it. She begins to embrace uniqueness rather than conform to the expectations of others. The stripping away encourages self-reflection, clarity, and acceptance of her true nature. Identity revealed through stripping away also fosters resilience. When external validations disappear, a woman learns to stand firm in herself and in God. She discovers the ability to navigate life's challenges without relying on applause or affirmation. She becomes less swayed by opinions, less dependent on approval, and more confident in her own voice. This internal strength forms the foundation for leadership, influence, and fulfillment. Without identity anchored in God rather than external markers, resilience is shallow and fragile. With identity anchored, resilience becomes deep, unshakable, and sustainable. Moreover, this revelation nurtures freedom. Many women unconsciously conform to expectations out of fear of rejection, criticism, or disapproval. When external structures crumble, these pressures lose power. The stripping away removes the masks worn to please others and allows the authentic self to emerge. Freedom comes from understanding that self-worth does not require constant approval, and that living according to divine calling is more valuable than meeting human expectations. A woman who embraces this truth walks boldly, speaks freely, and lives intentionally. Identity revealed also strengthens decision-making. A woman who knows her worth independently of circumstance is less likely to be manipulated, controlled, or swayed by unhealthy influences. Her choices become guided by purpose rather than fear, vision rather than insecurity, and conviction rather than pressure. Boundaries are no longer arbitrary, but rooted in self-respect and clarity about who she is and what she represents. She operates from a place of authenticity, authority, and confidence that cannot be easily shaken by rejection or criticism. Furthermore, the revelation of true identity impacts relationships. When a woman understands who she is, she attracts connections that respect and honor her rather than compromise or diminish her. She no longer tolerates toxicity or pretends to be someone she is not to be accepted. Her presence becomes aligned with her calling, and the energy she invests flows into relationships and environments that nurture growth, purpose, and impact. Identity clarifies compatibility and eliminates compromise that arises from insecurity or fear. Ultimately, identity revealed when everything else is stripped away prepares a woman for purpose. God removes what distracts, diminishes, or hinders her so that she can embrace what he has designed her to accomplish. True identity, rooted in him, becomes the foundation for destiny. When external markers fail, internal strength remains. When relationships falter, divine worth persists. When opportunities delay, purpose continues. The stripping away is not loss, it is liberation. It is God removing the unnecessary to make space for the essential. It is God refining the vessel so that when restoration and promotion come, they are carried with confidence, clarity, and integrity. A woman whose identity emerges from stripping away walks differently. She walks with peace, knowing her value is inherent. She speaks with authority, rooted in understanding of herself and God. She makes decisions with wisdom, grounded in divine guidance. She loves with clarity, unencumbered by neediness or insecurity. She faces trials with resilience, knowing that her foundation is unshakable. And she steps into purpose with boldness because what God has revealed about her cannot be erased by circumstance, criticism, or the world's opinion. The stripping away reveals her true self, and in that self, God's destiny for her is fully secured. Surrender unlocks strength and authority. This truth is at the core of a woman's spiritual journey, especially when she faces seasons of pressure, loss, or uncertainty. Human nature often resists surrender because it feels like weakness, loss of control, or defeat. We are conditioned to believe that holding tightly, managing circumstances, and controlling outcomes is strength. Yet God's design operates differently. True strength is not found in resistance or self-reliance. It is revealed when a woman releases control and trusts her life to God and allows His will to shape her path. Surrender is the key that transforms brokenness into power, weakness into resilience, and obedience into authority. It is paradoxical but profoundly liberating. Letting go becomes the source of genuine control, and yielding becomes the pathway to influence. Surrender is often misunderstood as passive submission, but it is an active, deliberate, and intentional act of trust. A woman who surrenders does not do so because she has no options or because she has given up. She surrenders because she recognizes that her perspective is limited, her strength is finite, and God's wisdom is infinite. Surrender requires faith to believe that God is present, aware, and working even when circumstances appear chaotic. It is the conscious choice to align with divine will rather than fight it, to step into obedience rather than cling to comfort, and to allow God to orchestrate her path rather than attempting to force it according to her own understanding. The process of surrender often begins in seasons of breaking, when the familiar ways of control know L. Hunger work. Plans fail, relationships falter, opportunities are delayed, and outcomes are uncertain. These experiences teach a woman the limitations of her own strength. They reveal the futility of relying solely on human effort, manipulation, or strategy. In those moments, she is confronted with a choice: resist, complain, or fear, or release and trust. Surrender transforms her response from frustration to faith, from anxiety to peace, and from self-reliance to divine dependence. The moment she chooses surrender, the pressure that once felt crushing begins to serve a purpose. It molds character, shapes faith, and strengthens resolve. Surrender also develops humility, which is the foundation of authority in God's kingdom. A woman who relies on her own understanding may achieve temporary influence, but she lacks the depth and stability that come from yielding to God. Humility allows her to recognize that strength is not in dominance or control, but in obedience, wisdom, and alignment with divine principles. When she surrenders, she admits that she does not have all the answers. She cannot control every outcome, and she is dependent on God's timing and direction. This humility does not diminish authority, it amplifies it. God honors the surrendered heart by granting insight, power, and influence that cannot be obtained through force, manipulation, or pride. Strength emerges through surrender because it shifts the source of power from self to God. A woman who releases her fears, insecurities, and need for control taps into divine strength. She discovers that God's power flows through her when she stops trying to carry the burden alone. She gains resilience to face challenges without crumbling, wisdom to navigate complexities without confusion, and courage to act decisively without hesitation. Surrender clears the way for God to work in ways that human effort cannot replicate. It allows her to operate in authority that is both unshakable and sustainable because it is rooted in divine backing rather than human approval. Authority that comes from surrender is both subtle and powerful. A surrendered woman does not need to assert herself aggressively or demand recognition. Her presence carries weight because it reflects alignment with God, confidence rooted in faith, and clarity anchored in truth. People are drawn to her not by the loudness of her voice, but by the integrity of her character, the depth of her wisdom, and the stability of her decisions. Surrender transforms her influence into a channel of blessing, guidance, and leadership rather than self-interest, ambition, or control. This authority is sustainable because it is unshakable, even when circumstances are unstable or opposition arises. Surrender also cultivates patience and trust. In the absence of surrender, a woman may rush outcomes, manipulate situations, or force decisions, often resulting in frustration, failure, or disappointment. When she surrenders, she learns to wait for God's timing without anxiety, to act in alignment rather than impulse, and to trust that every delay, closed door, or challenge serves a higher purpose. Patience nurtured through surrender is not passive waiting. It is active trust, confidence, and obedience, even when the path is unclear. It allows her to maintain peace, focus, and clarity while walking through seasons that once felt destabilizing. Another crucial aspect of surrender is emotional freedom. A woman who resists surrender often carries fear, worry, guilt, and frustration. She feels compelled to control outcomes, anticipate every possibility, and manage relationships perfectly. Surrender releases these burdens. It allows her to rest in God's presence, trust his timing, and focus on what is within her influence rather than obsessing over what is beyond it. Emotional freedom transforms reactions into responses, chaos into calm, and anxiety into confidence. This freedom is a source of inner strength that cannot be achieved through self-effort alone. Surrender also shapes decision-making and discernment. When a woman aligns her choices with God's will rather than personal desire or societal pressure, she operates from clarity rather than confusion. She learns to recognize what is consistent with her purpose and what is diversion. She becomes wise in choosing relationships, opportunities, and commitments that nurture growth and honor divine direction. Decisions made from surrender carry authority because they reflect alignment with God rather than impulsive emotion or insecurity. Ultimately, surrender unlocks strength and authority because it places a woman in partnership with God rather than in conflict with him. She no longer struggles against circumstances, people, or her own limitations. She walks in obedience, peace, and confidence that God is at work. Her life becomes a living testimony that releasing control does not diminish power, it multiplies it. Her influence becomes transformative because it is grounded in divine wisdom rather than human ambition. Her voice carries weight, her presence commands respect, and her leadership inspires trust. Surrender is the pathway through which God transforms brokenness into purpose, pressure into preparation, and limitation into empowerment. In yielding, she discovers the depth of strength, the height of authority, and the freedom to fulfill the destiny God has prepared for her. Pain is transformed into purpose. This principle is one of the most profound truths a woman can understand in her spiritual journey because it reveals how God redeems suffering and turns it into a foundation for influence, leadership, and blessing. Pain is often viewed as a setback, a curse, or a punishment. Human nature resists it, questions it, and seeks to escape it. Yet God's perspective on pain is different. Pain is never wasted in his hands. It is a tool, a teacher, and a catalyst designed to shape character, deepen faith, and clarify purpose. Every tear, every stroke, glow, every heartbreak carries a hidden seed of destiny that God intends to nurture, transform, and multiply. When a woman faces pain, whether through loss, betrayal, rejection, disappointment, or delay, it can feel like her world is unraveling. She may question her worth, her path, or God's plan for her life. Emotions are raw, thoughts are scattered, and hope can seem distant. Yet within these seasons, God is at work. He is observing, guiding, and preparing her to transform the very experiences that feel like obstacles into the instruments of her purpose. Pain has a unique ability to teach lessons that comfort never can, to expose weaknesses that success hides, and to cultivate resilience that privilege cannot produce. The transformation from pain to purpose begins with perspective. A woman must learn to see beyond the immediate discomfort and recognize that God's hand is present even in suffering. This does not mean minimizing the difficulty of the experience. Pain is real, and grief, fear, and frustration are valid. But God invites a shift in focus from questioning why this happened to asking what he is teaching, what he is preparing, and how he can use this experience for greater good. When perspective changes, pain becomes a teacher rather than a tormentor. It becomes a laboratory in which faith, character, and wisdom are tested and refined. Pain cultivates empathy and compassion. A woman who has endured betrayal, loss, or hardship gains insight into the struggles of hers. She develops sensitivity to suffering, understanding the weight of grief, the sting of rejection, and the depth of disappointment. This empathy becomes a powerful tool for leadership and influence. She is able to comfort, guide, and inspire others because she has walked through similar experiences herself. Her testimony becomes credible, her counsel becomes wise, and her encouragement carries authenticity. The experiences that once wounded her now equip her to serve and uplift others in ways that surface-level success cannot achieve. Pain also fosters resilience. Every challenge endured strengthens emotional, mental, and spiritual muscles that would otherwise remain dormant. A woman learns to persevere in uncertainty, to stand firm under pressure, and to navigate trials without losing faith or identity. Resilience develops patience, endurance, and determination. It builds confidence that circumstances cannot shake. She discovers that setbacks are temporary, challenges are instructive, and storms are opportunities for growth rather than reasons for surrender. Through pain, she emerges stronger, steadier, and more prepared for the responsibilities and influence that God intends to release. Transformation of pain into purpose also teaches discernment. Hard experiences clarify priorities, reveal false relationships, and highlight distractions. A woman begins to understand which connections nurture her calling and which ones hinder it. She recognizes opportunities that GN with her purpose and avoids paths that lead to compromise. Pain sharpens perception, strengthens judgment, and deepens understanding of what is necessary for spiritual, emotional, and relational health. The very experiences that cause confusion or heartbreak become the lessons that guide wiser choices in the future. Purpose emerges when pain is surrendered to God. A woman must consciously allow God to redeem her experiences rather than trying to bury, ignore, or escape them. Surrendering pain means trusting that nothing is wasted, that every trial carries intentionality, and that every struggle can be used to bless, teach, and empower. This surrender transforms bitterness into gratitude, anger into motivation, and grief into insight. What was once a source of limitation now becomes a platform for impact. The wounds she carried can become tools for healing others. The obstacles can become stepping stones, and the setbacks can become testimonies of divine faithfulness. Pain transformed into purpose also inspires vision. A woman who has endured challenges develops clarity about what she wants to build, whom she wants to serve, and how she wants to influence her environment. She begins to understand that her life experiences are not random. They are preparation for leadership, advocacy, mentoring, or ministry. Her purpose is no longer abstract. It becomes tangible, actionable, and mission-driven. She realizes that her pain has cultivated skills, insight, and strength that make her uniquely qualified for the calling God has placed upon her life. Transformation also produces gratitude and humility. A woman who has experienced suffering learns to value progress, celebrate growth, and appreciate provision. She develops humility because she understands the fragility of circumstances, the importance of divine guidance, and the necessity of reliance on God. Gratitude shifts the focus from what was lost to what has been gained, from what hurt to what has strengthened her, and from despair to hope. These qualities enhance character and ensure that future success is carried with grace rather than entitlement. Finally, pain transformed into purpose becomes testimony. A woman's story of endurance, growth, and divine intervention becomes a source of hope, encouragement, and inspiration for others. Her life exemplifies that suffering is not meaningless, that trials can produce victory, and that God's plan is bigger than temporary pain. She becomes a living example that challenges are not obstacles to destiny. They are preparation for it. Every scar, every setback, and every struggle becomes evidence that God can take brokenness and turn it into something beautiful, functional, and powerful. In conclusion, the transformation of pain into purpose is a divine principle that shapes character, cultivates resilience, refines discernment, deepens empathy, and clarifies vision. God does not waste suffering. He redeems it, repurposes it, and uses it to prepare a man for influence, leadership, and lasting impact. What once brought tears, heartbreak, or despair becomes a foundation for testimony, wisdom, and authority. Pain is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of a season in which God reveals that every trial endured, every wound healed, and every struggle overcome is a step toward fulfilling the destiny He designed. A woman who embraces this truth walks forward empowered, confident, and purpose-driven, knowing that her experiences are not random but intentional, and that her pain has been transformed into a divine purpose that will bless generations. God uses broken seasons to prepare generational impact. This principle is one of the most powerful truths about how God works in the life of a woman. Her personal journey is never just about her. It affects families, communities, and even generations to come. When God allows a woman to experience breaking, it is not merely for her correction or growth. It is preparation for influence that stretches far beyond her own life. The lessons, strength, faith, and wisdom she acquires in these seasons become the foundation for the lives of those she touches, creating a ripple effect that continues for years, sometimes decades. What may feel like personal suffering or isolation is actually a strategic planting of seeds that will bear fruit for her children, community, and future generations. A broken season often begins with experiences that feel unfair, disappointment, loss, rejection, betrayal, delay, or failure. These experiences can leave a woman questioning her worth, her future, or even God's intentions. Yet, God's purpose is much larger than immediate comfort or recognition. Every challenge she endures is preparing her to carry strength, faith, and wisdom into spaces where her impact will affect others. Just as gold is refined by fire, a woman's character, faith, and resilience are refined by broken seasons. Without these tests, the depth required to influence the next generation would be incomplete, unstable, or even damaging. God knows that the strength she gains now will sustain those she will lead, mentor, or parent later. Generational impact begins with example. A woman who has endured trials and emerged with faith, integrity, and resilience becomes a model for her family and community. Her children observe how she handles disappointment, navigates conflict, and maintains hope in the midst of challenges. They learn that life will not always be easy, but strength, wisdom, and reliance on God can overcome adversity. This example shapes their values, their faith, and their character, often in ways that no verbal teaching can. Brokenness equips a woman with the authenticity and authority to lead by example because she has lived the lessons she teaches. Her testimony becomes a roadmap for others, particularly for those who are looking to navigate similar struggles. Broken seasons also cultivate empathy and emotional intelligence, which are crucial for generational influence. A woman who has been wounded, misunderstood, or overlooked gains insight into the struggles of others. She understands pain, loss, and vulnerability in a way that enables her to guide, comfort, and support her children, family, and community. She develops the ability to nurture with wisdom, counsel with clarity, and correct with love because she has experienced the same realities herself. Her brokenness becomes a tool for connection, influence, and guidance. Generations learn from her ability to respond with compassion, patience, and strength rather than fear, anger, or frustration. The spiritual dimension of generational impact is also significant. God prepares a woman in brokenness to carry spiritual authority that will influence the faith of future generations. Her prayers are strengthened, her trust in God deepened, and her spiritual discernment sharpened through trials. This spiritual maturity equips her to lead her family, mentor younger women, and contribute to her community in ways that leave a lasting legacy. The lessons she learns in hardship, perseverance, obedience, patience, and faith become the spiritual inheritance she passes on. Her influence is not temporary. It shapes beliefs, decisions, and values that last for generations. Broken seasons also teach resilience, discipline, and strategic thinking, qualities that directly impact generational outcomes. A woman who has learned to endure, navigate setbacks, and rise stronger is better prepared to guide her family through challenges. She does not panic in crises. She evaluates situations with clarity, acts with wisdom, and protects those under her care. Her ability to model resilience equips her children to face their own trials with courage and confidence. Her discipline ensures that values, faith, and practices are consistently applied within her household and community. These traits are rarely inherited naturally. They are cultivated through experience, often in seasons of hardship that demand growth, reflection, and endurance. Breaking also reshapes priorities. A woman who has endured difficult seasons becomes more intentional about the legacy she leaves. She understands that what she tolerates, models, or values directly affects the lives of those who look up to her. Brokenness teaches her to focus on what is eternal rather than temporary, to invest in relationships rather than appearances, and to cultivate character rather than status. Her influence becomes strategic, intentional, and purposeful. She learns to nurture qualities that will produce long-term fruit. ensuring that her children, family, and community inherit wisdom, integrity, and faith that are rooted in experience and divine guidance. Pain and struggle also prepare a woman to be a source of healing for future generations. Her experiences equip her to speak truth into lives of those facing similar trials, offering guidance, encouragement, and solutions she has discovered through lived experience. She becomes a safe place for others to seek counsel, and her words carry weight because they are informed by endurance, understanding, and spiritual insight. The brokenness she endured becomes the bridge for healing, growth, and wisdom for others, amplifying her impact beyond her personal sphere. Ultimately, broken seasons create depth and authenticity. A woman who has faced trials and emerged with faith, resilience, and wisdom carries authority and credibility that cannot be fabricated. She does not rely on superficial measures of success. Her influence is rooted in authenticity. Her children and community learn to respect strength shaped by experience, trust guidance shaped by insight, and value leadership grounded in lived wisdom. Generational impact is not about control. It is about legacy. The lessons she embodies, the faith she models, and the wisdom she demonstrates will ripple outward, shaping the lives of countless individuals across time. In conclusion, God uses broken seasons to prepare a woman for generational impact. Every challenge, disappointment, loss, or trial is part of a divine design to equip her with resilience, wisdom, faith, and authority. Her experiences create a foundation for influencing her children, her family, her community, and your generations. Her brokenness becomes the very tool God uses to cultivate leaders, shape values, nurture faith, and leave an enduring legacy. What feels like a personal struggle is, in truth, preparation for extraordinary influence. The woman who embraces the lessons of breaking walks forward empowered, intentional, and prepared to impact generations in ways that only divine preparation could produce. Restoration produces a stronger, wiser, unshakable woman. This truth is the culmination of God's work through breaking, healing, and refinement. Many women struggle to understand the seasons of loss, pain, or disappointment in their lives, questioning why God allows suffering or delays blessings. Yet every stage, the breaking, the healing, the surrender, and the trials prepares the heart and mind for restoration that is not temporary or fragile, but enduring and transformative. Restoration is not merely a return to what was lost. It is the elevation of a woman into a stronger version of herself, equipped with wisdom, discernment, authority, and unshakable confidence to walk fully in her purpose. It is the divine response to endurance, obedience, and faithfulness during the most challenging seasons. A woman who experiences restoration emerges fundamentally changed. She is not simply restored to her former state, she is elevated beyond it. God does not restore superficially or partially. He restores completely, intentionally, and with added strength. This means she carries more wisdom than before, having learned lessons that pain alone could teach. She possesses emotional stability, having processed grief, disappointment, and betrayal with God's guidance. She exudes confidence rooted in identity rather than circumstances. Her restored life reflects divine craftsmanship. Each challenge she endured was a tool used to prepare her for greatness that cannot be shaken by future trials. Wisdom is one of the first markers of a restored woman. Having navigated the storms of life, she develops insight that cannot be acquired through comfort or ease. She understands timing, discernment, and the value of patience. She recognizes patterns in relationships, opportunities, and challenges, and she approaches life with strategic clarity. Restoration equips her to make decisions not impulsively, but with reflection and understanding. Her counsel becomes reliable because it is grounded in experience and spiritual insight. Wisdom enables her to avoid pitfalls, to mentor others effectively, and to operate in environments that require clarity, vision, and stability. Strength accompanies restoration in ways that are visible and internal. A restored woman does not crumble under pressure. She withstands it with poise and confidence. Her foundation has been tested in trials, and the lessons learned have fortified her resolve. She no longer fears uncertainty because she has experienced God's faithfulness during the darkest seasons. Challenges that would have once caused despair now produce resilience, patience, and endurance. Strength is no longer just physical or emotional. It is spiritual and multidimensional. She becomes a source of stability for others, capable of holding space for families, communities, and teams without being overwhelmed by external circumstances. Restoration also produces clarity of purpose. The experiences of breaking, healing, and surrender reveal what is essential and eliminate what is superficial. A woman begins to recognize her unique calling, her God-given gifts, and the path she is meant to walk. She no longer chases validation, approval, or fleeting success. She aligns every decision, relationship, and opportunity with the purpose God has designed for her. Restoration ensures that her energy is invested in what matters most, that her focus is sharp, and that her steps are deliberate. This clarity allows her to live intentionally rather than reactively, and her life becomes a testament to divine alignment rather than human ambition. Authority is another result of restoration. The experiences she has endured equip her to lead with confidence, authenticity, and credibility. A woman who has walked through trials, endured pain, and emerged restored carries a presence that commands respect and inspires trust. People are drawn to her not because of superficial power, but because her authority reflects spiritual depth, integrity, and wisdom. Her decisions influence positively. Her mentorship guides effectively, and her leadership carries impact that is sustainable. Restoration amplifies authority by combining life experience with spiritual understanding, creating a woman who cannot be easily swayed, shaken, or undermined. Emotional stability is also a hallmark of restoration. A restored woman has processed her pain and healed from emotional wounds. She does not react impulsively or allow past hurt to dictate her responses. Instead, she operates from a place of peace, confidence, and self-awareness. Emotional stability allows her to maintain healthy relationships, set firm boundaries, and navigate conflicts with grace. She does not carry bitterness or resentment. She channels her energy toward growth, purpose, and contribution. Emotional maturity is not achieved overnight. It is cultivated through brokenness, reflection, surrender, and divine restoration. Faith deepens during restoration. The woman who has endured storms without losing hope develops a spiritual resilience that cannot be shaken by circumstance. She understands God's faithfulness firsthand and trusts his timing completely. Restoration solidifies a faith that is active, unwavering, and practical. Her confidence in God's guidance allows her to take steps of courage, embrace opportunities with discernment, and act decisively. Faith, strengthened through trials and confirmed through restoration, becomes the anchor of her life, influencing every decision, action, and relationship. Restoration also enhances gratitude and perspective. Having experienced loss, delay, and suffering, a woman develops a profound appreciation for blessings, growth, and divine intervention. She values the journey as much as the destination, understanding that each trial was a tool to prepare her for this moment of elevation. Gratitude shapes humility and generosity, ensuring that she uses her restored life to serve, encourage, and uplift others. Her perspective shifts from entitlement or comparison to acknowledgement of God's sovereignty, timing, and purpose in every stage of her life. Finally, restoration produces a woman who is unshakable. She is resilient in the face of trials, confident in her identity, wise in her decisions, and unwavering in faith. She does not collapse under pressure, nor does she compromise her values for temporary gain. Her restored life is marked by peace, clarity, authority, and intentional influence. She is fully equipped to walk into destiny, fulfill God's plan, and impact generations. What was once broken is now fortified, and what was once weak is now empowered. Restoration completes the divine process. The woman who was broken, refined, and surrendered emerges as a testimony of God's faithfulness, strength, and transformative power. She is stronger, wiser, and unshakable, ready to fulfill every purpose God has prepared for her life.